Afternoon, guys. Today, our group one is going to discuss our Leading with Agility final presentation. Um, what we have decided to do is split this presentation into two sections. First, we're all going to discuss our individual book assignments, themes that relate back to the learnings from the class, and also how it affects our careers. And then we're going to come back together again, and we're going to have a bit more of a roundtable discussion on similar themes from our books. But before we start, every presentation needs a quote. So our quote comes from Harry Truman, that not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers. So in order for us to grow as leaders, we need to read, absorb, and learn from others. Through our book assignments, we've found some common themes that are motivation, leadership, discipline, emotional intelligence, and empowerment. And what we're going to do is we're going to start digging into our books and the themes that we found. So I'm going to pass it over to Logan to discuss his book first.
Hi, my name is Logan. Throughout this class, I've noticed a lot of different themes. One of them that I thought was very prominent was change. My book showed me that the way we work has changed over time, and the way people are motivated has changed. And the book kind of urges us as leaders to change along with that. Leadership isn't exactly what it used to be. And for all of us in the group, I think we realized that it's not what we thought it was when we first started out in this class. But we know that we need to understand how the world around us has been changing in order for us to become better leaders today. And the first week of the class, we learned that the desired qualities of leaders changed from intelligence and technical skill to emotional intelligence. The next couple of weeks of class, we learned that leadership changed from being about superstars and one person calling all the shots to where everyone has an ability to lead from where they're at. And leadership in a team setting is more about every individual leading that group together rather than just one person. From my book, I learned a lot about different ways to motivate people and the main types of effective motivation, such as autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And I learned that improper motivation techniques like incentives, rewards, and punishments can actually result in negative behaviors, which are detrimental to your overall productivity. In my near future, I'd like to use what I've learned in this class to spend more time getting to know my employees better and learn how to better motivate them the right way in order to build stronger, more productive teams together. Thank you.
In this book, author Randy Soma, a former CEO and board member of Johnson Controls Incorporated, uses his experience and knowledge to provide context to his opinions and draw conclusions to how we can adjust the path that corporate America is currently on and start working for the people instead of themselves. Some key takeaways from this book are that the CEOs only cared about the short-term results to appease their shareholders and made critical errors by putting Band-Aids on the problems instead of solving the root causes. And they also have no incentive to do their jobs well because of the astronomical salaries and the pay structure. So author Randy Sama believes that we need to change the way we hire and hold these leaders accountable, or we might find ourselves in an even worse situation in the future. And to me, this book and its examples relates back to week one's materials, specifically Colin Powell's 13 rules of leadership. One rule that comes to mind is rule 4, it can be done. True leaders make things happen, and if one approach doesn't work, to find another. Too many leaders are stuck on the short-term results, and they don't see the bigger picture for the company and its employees. This also relates to rule 11, have a vision, be demanding. Leaders currently don't have a vision for the future, only the short-term results, causing employees to lose trust in their leaders. So for me, future steps would be to find ways to educate the general public and employees about what is going on in corporate America and what we can do to begin to hold these leaders accountable for their actions.
So in Good to Great, Collins wanted to investigate what actually made a company great. He knew that there's lots of companies that can have sustained growth. He said that a great company should have sustained growth for 15 years. So one of the most remarkable things about the book is that the research team consisted of 21 people. He spent 15,000 hours researching it. So it's not exactly like it was just a one man's full process. It's a well-researched book. And one of the key concepts that he came out with was that you need discipline. You need disciplined people, disciplined thought, and disciplined action. And this likens back to Bernstein's discussion on building teams from week 2, that you need to have the right team that are aimed towards the right goal. So those team members all have to be thinking critically about what they're doing, and then they also need to act and obtain their goals. He also discussed the flywheel principle, and I've actually used this in my career, shared it with my team the other day, that not everything we do is going to be this huge action that's going to turn this big flywheel that you see on the slide. Our day is filled with small actions that start building up momentum that are going to start turning that flywheel. So it's important to remember as we kind of motivate our teams that not every action is going to crank the flywheel around. It's just a continued motion and continued action. And then he also brings in the idea of a level 5 leader. He has a hierarchy of leadership, and a level 5 leader really culminates all of the information that we've learned throughout this semester on how to be a better leader. It's the culmination of it. And as Logan said, a good leader isn't necessarily a superstar. Collins actually calls out specifically, you're not a superstar leader. You are there for your team and you're there for your company to grow. So those are the 3 kind of key concepts that I took from Collins. Overall, great book, well researched, and it culminated a lot of the thought processes from this class. Now I'll pass it over to Rob.
All right, and my book was written by author Brene Brown. She's an author who has wrote several books, and in her book, she's expanded on her concepts of leadership. I really broke mine down to the simplest form for this book. In the book I read, Dare to Lead, Brene Brown, she talked a lot about vulnerability in the workplace and how the role that it could play when you're working with your company and when you're guiding your people. But she said in order to get to that point, the first thing we have to do as people is we have to remove the armor. And when we talk about armor, you know, there are many things that go into what they consider armor. When she was doing her seminars before she started writing her books, you know, she met with military personnel, university staff, big Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies. And a lot of times those leaders of those companies viewed vulnerabilities as a weakness, and they were armored up. And through her readings and her studies, she's found that armor can be things such as cynicism, bullying, demeaning, keeping all the gold stars for yourself. And she kind of goes about talking about ways how we can combat this armor and remove this armor so that we can be vulnerable with the people that we're working with. Some of the things that she talked about was celebrating small victories. You know, a lot of times we get caught up in thinking about just the big things, and it's more than a big thing. All victories should be celebrated, no matter how small, because in order to be great in any company, there are incremental steps to get to where you need to be at. So we should never dismiss those steps and just celebrate the big things, because eventually, with the time that it takes to get to those big things, it could wear on the company to the point where people start to lose motivation. So she talked about that. With the bullying, some ways she talked about preventing bullying is by just having an open environment where everybody can talk, everybody's free to express their concerns, and creating basically a safe place for people in your organization. And some of these lessons I've taken myself and actually applied them with my job, me being a senior manager at FedEx for 14 years now. And with this, I've been able to really connect with my people, because one of the things Brene Brown talks about when it talks about connecting with people is not necessarily putting yourself in people's shoes, but putting yourself into that emotion. And so when you put yourself into that emotion, that's something everybody can relate to. Everybody can't relate to being harassed by police, but everybody can relate to a feeling of anguish that comes with being bullied or being picked on or something like that. So one of the big things that Miss Brene Brown talks about is just making sure that we connect with the feeling, and making sure that when we connect with those feelings, we stay in the moment with the people. And as we lower our armor, we lean into those difficult conversations, it's going to make your people more willing to lean in and trust you and follow you as far as it goes with doing things like that. The ways I want to try to implement in the future, for me personally, I just want to create a safe environment for my people to the point where they're okay with having conversations. They don't think any question is stupid, and we can go from there, and then we can continue to build on something and have a great base to go off of, just with removing the armor and allowing ourselves to lead with empathy and be vulnerable.
Hi, this is Farah. In the book Lean In, Women Work and the Will to Lead, I was inspired to hear from the successful COO of Facebook, Sheryl Sandberg. She shined the light on the gender inequality and urged women to lean in, be ambitious, and take more risks in their work. I feel that she summarized her over 20 years of experience and drew the map for me and for other women to take more leadership roles. In her book, she asks women and men to support each other so we can achieve an equality. And this will lead to a greater happiness for all. A key concept I found it very inspiring and influencing that I have been learning from her book, in addition to the material we've been learning for the past weeks in the course, I would like to implement it in my professional career in the near future, will be being self-confident, taking risks and challenging tasks, and creating opportunity for myself, planning for my career trajectory by setting an 18-month goal and a long-term dream. How important are authentic communication, because it's the key for any successful relationship. Be open to hear the truth and to ask for feedback. How powerful is the emotional intelligence for any effective leadership, and to lead as a coach, and to continuous learning and self-improvement.
So one of the things we realized pretty early on in week 2 when we had our simulator was that, you know, we've got 1,300 pages of books here to really dig into and do an analysis on, and that's kind of too much for one person. So that's why we took it upon ourselves that at the end of each week's assignments, we'd have our little Zoom session where we'd discuss the books. So we want to give you a little bit of a snippet of those discussions.
Yep, and in starting those discussions, I'll kind of kick off. I kind of resonated a lot with Tyler's book. Tyler's book talked about bad leadership, and it just so happens that my book kind of touched on that as well, because when you think about items such as wearing armor, many of the forms of armor are different forms of bad leadership.
Yeah, and I'll pile onto that with Rob's book. And he discussed how too often leaders hide their vulnerability and believe that this can be removed from the workplace. And this relates to my book and some real life experiences of how leaders simply do not see employees on the same level as themselves. So I see similarities between the two authors' main idea of empathy and doing the right thing, because in the end, people's livelihood depends on the good leadership.
I also resonated with Tyler's book, talking about the CEOs that made a whole bunch of money and they were just so short-sighted they didn't care about a whole lot of things. My book talked about that a lot as a sign of those negative motivation techniques. And it gave kind of a solution to, if you fix those motivation techniques and you motivate people the right way and you correct our baseline rewards, then we can fix that broken system that Tyler's book was talking about.
I feel that Logan's book is aligned with mindset. It's kind of a book for leadership, self-improvement type of book, which I advocate for any leadership to keep continuous learning and self-improvement. And it's kind of a useful guidance that challenges the traditional mindset on how we manage and lead by showing the contrast between what business believe and what really works from sciences, or what employee really wants.
And I'll be honest, while Farah was discussing her book and women in leadership, it really made me, in an engineering field, trying to reach out to societies that engage women from an early age to get them into the engineering world. But also it was perfectly timed for the professional development proponent of our course, that it was time for us all to start filling in professional development spreadsheets with exactly that. We want a long-term and a short-term goals. It was just perfectly timed.
Yeah, and then in closing, like just with Craig's book, I know it touched a lot about discipline. And one thing that we've taken out of this class as a whole is that, you know, discipline is what drives all leadership. So if good leadership specifically, because with good leadership, you got processes in place, you can be consistent. And that's one of the key things that we took out of this, and also helped to make sure we had good leadership, good teamwork while working through this class and this assignment. Thank you.